We got another big report from Elliotte Friedman indicating a certain player that has been linked to goalie trade talks and why they might be on their way to Montreal. We'll be discussing whether or not Montreal should go for this player. Plus, the Habs beat the Stars in the game that was a bit closer than it should have been as Slafkovsky dominates again. We get some scoring from our D-men, and there was one word for this game, and that was exciting. We'll cover all that on this episode of Habs Digest, and we're just going to get straight into the video, and we're going to start with this Habs and Stars game. And like I said, this game was extremely exciting, and hey, but you don't need to take my word for it. Just take a look at the play-by-play for the last couple minutes of the third period. You know, Montreal was up 4-1 in this game, but Dallas made it closer than it should have been. They pulled the goalie with 6 minutes left, and they scored once. I believe it was Wyatt Johnston, and then with 2 minutes left in the game, Jason Robertson scored to make it 4-3. The Habs couldn't get an empty netter, and Dallas had their net empty for a good chunk at the end of that third period. And look at all the Dallas Stars plays here. Sean Monahan wins one faceoff amongst all this, but Sam Montembeault stood tall through all this. The Habs defense capped off by David Savard at the end, blocking shots left and right, leading to a win. And as always, feel free to pause, take a look at the box score, but oh my goodness, what a game. You see Jake Evans getting a ton of time on ice in this game, 20 minutes, Monahan as well, Slav with the 19, Suzuki with 22. It was a game to behold, and what I found interesting about this game was the relative lack of time on ice for a lot of the defensemen. Matheson still cracking 20 minutes, but the other guys not so much, but there was so much to talk about in this game. Of course, Dallas scores on the first shift of the game, 11 seconds in, and a lot of Habs fans are like, all right, I'm done. I'm not going to watch this game because last time the Habs played the Stars, I believe the Stars handled the Habs pretty well. But no, Montreal came back, and it was Suzuki not that far into the first period off a great play where Slafkovsky gets it off the boards from a great play from Jordan Harris, passes it across, one-timer, tipped in. Nick Suzuki, well, he took the slap shot, was tipped in by the Dallas defender, is what it is. But we had some great plays from everyone on the Habs. Slafkovsky was actually tangentially involved in a lot of the goals there tonight. For example, on Cayden Guhle's goal, Slav was actually out there forechecking at the end of his shift, just trying to make some plays, and it was just after he skated to the bench. Guhle came in and hopped on just after, and he potted a rebound home off a point shot. And Slafkovsky, again, could have gotten an assist on this. It was a power play. He was at the blue line. He backhanded it down to the corner, sort of a spin move, and it was a tic-tac-toe between Suzuki to Monahan to Caufield at the side of the net. So really, Slav could have had multiple points in this game. There was another one where he forced a turnover in the defensive zone. Puck went the other way, but because he didn't touch it, he didn't get credit on the assist for Jordan Harris's goal. He was everywhere. He played a phenomenal game tonight. Could have had 2 assists, could have been a +3 or 2 or 3 arguably. So really great game from him. Suzuki continues his dominance. He's now up to 34 points on the season. He's approaching that point per game pace, and considering his pretty poor stretch we saw there, that little dry spell he had, it's kind of amazing. Caufield's shooting percentage is going back up. All things are turning up good for Montreal. Sam Montembeault, despite those 2 empty net goals for Dallas, or net goals with the goalie pulled, is what it is. He really kept Montreal in this game. I can't count the amount of times that the puck came right out in front and he had to make a quick, smart decision to keep the Habs in the game by making a good save. So he really showed up tonight. And I really felt like almost everyone showed up for Montreal. Were there some issues here and there? Yeah, there sure were. I mean, Anderson, I got a bit scared. He took a puck off the hand. He was a little shaken up, but he stayed in the game. There was a lot of stuff in this game. Again, the ending got a little tight, but it was just another great win for Montreal, and this brings this road trip record. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's very respectable. I believe it's at 500 now. I could be wrong. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I haven't actually checked the exact numbers, but again, a lot of people were dreading this 7-game Christmas New Year road trip because last year a similar road trip is really what spelled the end of Montreal having a hot start, right? We saw that hot start. Montreal played really well right up until this road trip where things started to fall apart, but it feels like Montreal is not falling off the wagon just yet. There was a couple of losses where you're like, okay, that wasn't great, but no big losses. And Montreal has felt like they've been in every game they've played, and they go out and I would say handily beat Dallas because it was 4-1, let's be fair. Dallas did make it a game, but it was like Montreal looked like the better team basically the whole night. So a great win in Dallas. Later game, I know, but hey, gotta stay excited for these two. But let's jump into the more Jake Allen news, and this is actually a couple days old, and I missed this, and I haven't seen this reported on YouTube. Again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. If I missed this, if someone else has covered this already, I apologize, but a big report from Elliotte Friedman. This was from Saturday night, and according to NHL Trade Alert on Hockey Night in Canada, some Saturday hockey headlines, I should say, Elliott lists Toronto, Edmonton, Carolina, New Jersey, Kings as goalie buyers, and of course, these other teams as goalie sellers. But he mentions Montreal has a certain price for their goalies, and Anaheim has a high prices on Gibson. And we talked about that in yesterday's video, how Allen's price wasn't going to be as high as Gibson's, and whether or not Montreal could make a move there. Sure, but the important thing is that Elliotte Friedman said that Michael Bunting's name came up when Carolina was looking for a goalie, and we know that Carolina has had discussions already with Montreal. I believe that report came from Pierre Lebrun saying that they have had conversations. Ken Hughes has talked to the Carolina Hurricanes about shipping Jake Allen down there because, of course, the Hurricanes are in desperate need for a goalie. So Michael Bunting, well, a lot of you guys are probably familiar with him. He played with the Toronto Maple Leafs for the last 2 years before signing with Carolina this offseason, and he's a pest, but he's also a very talented player. Let's take a look at his hockey DB, shall we? So, I mean, OHL career with the Sioux Greyhounds, had that really, really nice draft plus 1 year there with 74 points, but was kind of in the AHL for a while before finally breaking through with Arizona, and then with Toronto, when giving that opportunity, he made the most of it. Back-to-back 23-goal seasons with 63 and 49 points respectively. But the big thing is this year, he has 26 points in 37 games, again, keeping up his physicality. We saw him when Montreal played Carolina. He was kind of getting into it with Jayden Struble a bit, 37 penalty minutes, but he's a talented player, and his contract is, well, it's a bit expensive, but for his production, it's really not that bad, right? You look at this, now, the big thing with Michael Bunting is that he has a 10-team no-trade list, and we don't know if Montreal's on that list, and it very well could be, because again, if we flash back to his hockey DB, I mean, he's from Ontario. He played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is it possible he doesn't want to play for Montreal? It's possible, but we don't know who his trade list is. But the big thing, too, is the $4.5 million. Now, obviously, if Montreal is going to move Jake Allen, this is kind of a perfect contract that fits right in. Now, if Montreal's retaining salary, maybe not as much. And again, Bunting's a bit of a commitment because you kind of have him in this weird position. Like, you're going to have him for this year plus 2 more years, and you're going to have him at 4.5 mil. Does that really fit Montreal's timeline for when they want to rebuild or not? But at the same time, having good offensive talent, I mean, it's never bad to have. You'd be trading 2 years, well, this year and next year, of Jake Allen for 3 years, I guess 2.5, of Michael Bunting, who is, again, a proven guy who can go out and get you somewhere between 50 and 60 points, and he's about on that pace again this year. He's a guy that can slot in on any line, and he brings that grit to the lineup, that bit of physicality, that kind of pest that a lot of teams like. My big problem with this, though, is that I just don't think Montreal is going to go for him, simply because of the fact that there's too much depth in the organization right now, and unless you can find a way to unload some of your other guys, I don't see why you would use a roster spot on a guy like Michael Bunting when you want to develop some of your young guys. And I've kind of traditionally been the kind of guy that says, well, not every young guy is going to come up and be amazing, right? Not every single one of these prospects. Filip Mesar, Owen Beck, Joshua Y, Emil Heineman, there's so many. Even Ullin, who's still playing well. RHP still needs to come back into the lineup. There's a lot of guys that deserve a shot, but Michael Bunting's already a proven NHLer. It's very possible that Michael Bunting is better than most of those guys I just named will ever be in the NHL. But I guess you'll never know it if you don't develop them. So that's where I kind of hit this impasse, right? Like, I want to know what you guys think. Like, is it better to have a proven guy who at the NHL level has proven to be effective, or if you're in Montreal's position for the next at least 2-3 years, would you rather just not have that guy entirely, even though he's a guy that can score, which is kind of what Montreal needs, and try to develop some of the younger guys to hope that they can fit the team long term? It's kind of a weird situation because, again, proven talent versus potential talent. But at the same time, I think that Montreal, personally, I think our current depth is a bit too much to be taking on someone like a Bunting. You're just trading your goalie problem for another logjam at forward problem. And then you bring in Bunting, who's at 4.5. You have Anderson at his contract. You have Gallagher still making 6.5. You have Armia still making 3. It's like, some of these have to go, and I feel like bringing in that contract is not ideal for Montreal. I think in an ideal world, if you're trading Jake Allen, you're going to want to even if you're not retaining salary, you're not going to want someone who's locked up for that many years. And again, it's a bit of limbo. Yes, it's Bunting's prime. It'll be until he's 31 years old, and he'll be very solid. And I would say he'd be worth that contract. But I think for Montreal's future and for their flexibility, I think they'd rather have maybe a choice of someone else to use with the cap space that they'll get relief from if they move Jake Allen. So it's a bit of an interesting name, though, nonetheless. Like, he's not a bad player. He's a good player that could fit in right now on pretty much any team in the NHL. But yeah, I feel like Carolina, they might be willing to move him. For Jake Allen, I'm not so sure, but I'd love to hear from you guys down below. But that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. And if you're still here, hit the subscribe button. I didn't remind you at the start of this video, but I'd like to remind you now because we are less than 100 subscribers away from 10,000. And if you guys want to be part of that first 10,000, hit the button now. Join the Habs Digest community. We'll be here all season long. I've been your host, Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.